Hi, it's Dorothy Guiding with Scrapbooking Quebec. Today I'm here for the Scrapbook Nerd online shop, and I'm going to be creating a 12 by 12 layout featuring Crepe Paper's Gingham Garden Collection. You're about to see the material I'll be using. I have paper and embellishments from this collection. It's absolutely gorgeous, a bit outside my comfort zone, but gorgeous. And I say that because I rarely play in soft color palettes, even though I find them absolutely beautiful. Today, I feel like doing something different, and I'm also going to be documenting heritage photos, and I find this collection perfect for heritage photos. The last time I checked, these products were available at the Scrapbook Nerd, so I'm going to link up the shop along with the products I use in the description box below. So here's what's on my desk. My jumping off point is 3 round photos matted with that white strip of paper. I'm going to show you the paper from this collection that I selected, and I also am going to show you the embellishments I have. So from this collection, I have alphas and clear stickers. I also have the Papery pack, which is kind of like an ephemera pack, only there are more pieces and they are a lot thinner than your typical ephemera pack. I also have some die cut pieces, some punched out pieces, and I'll talk all about my embellishing later on in the process. The first thing I want to do is play around with my photos, that white strip of paper, and my other papers. Now this was my original plan, to use that striped paper, which happens to be my favorite in the entire collection, as my background, and that white strip of photos to have it kind of go across the page towards the top. I knew I wanted a border between that white cardstock and the striped paper, so you see me auditioning wood grain, pink paper, yellow paper. But when I put that wood grain paper down, which was a full sheet, I kind of liked the way it looked, taking up 3/4 of the page. So at this point, my plan changes a bit. I do decide to go with that yellow paper for a narrow strip to place behind that white cardstock. So you see me cutting that down right now. And what I will do is just add a little bit of ink to those yellow strips of paper. So the ink I'm using is Morning Mist by VersaFine Clair, and it is the ink I most often reach for when I'm in my scrap room. I find it great for layering up or for inking up papers that I'm going to layer up on a layout, especially when I'm using a lot of patterned papers on a layout. Now what you see me doing is just adhering those yellow strips of paper behind that white cardstock, and I'm only leaving a little tiny bit peeking out. I will put measurements for all of this on the screen a little bit later on because my sizing does change up a bit throughout the process, so I will put it on a little bit later on. Now at this point I decide I like that wood grain paper, so I'm going to cut it down so that it takes up about 3/4 of the page. So what I also will do is add a little bit of ink to the top of that wood grain paper, the same ink I used on that yellow paper, just to make them all work together. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of ink there. I'm never heavy-handed on the ink, but I do find a little bit goes a long way in making everything look cohesive. So once again, I'm placing everything on the page, but now what I want to do is kind of walk you through my embellishing, let you know what I have on my desk, because the embellishing process takes quite a bit of time. The first thing I want to show you is the Papery pack, which is basically like an ephemera pack, only there are 200 pieces in a box, along with 200 pieces. They are very, very thin, but some of those pieces are adhesive. Most of them aren't, but some of them are like a washi tape sticker. And they come in various sizes. There's big pieces for layering, almost like 4 by 6, maybe even a little bit bigger, and some of them are really small. Now what I'm showing you are 2 die cut pieces. Now I cut those out for a past project with a die from Elizabeth Craft Designs, and I'm showing it to you right now. It's called like Pocket Fillers 2 or something like that. I will list it in the description box below because it is available at the Scrapbook Nerd. There's like a film strip on it. There's the detailed circle that I'm going to be using. There's also squares and circles that are stitched. It's kind of general shapes, but it is kind of a fun die set. I also showed you some punched out flowers that I made in advance. Those are two punches that I've probably had for 20 years. And in the middle of each one of those flowers, I punched out little circles. So I have little pink circles. And that was done with scraps from this Gingham garden collection. So now what I'm going to do is start creating two embellishment clusters. And my plan here is to create a diagonal design with a cluster in the top left and another in the bottom right. And basically, both clusters are going to be coming out from underneath the border there. And I will be working with the layers. And what I mean by that is I'm going to be tucking some pieces behind that wood grain paper, some pieces behind that yellow border, and some pieces behind the white cardstock. And in the end, some pieces will overlap that white cardstock and even some of the photos. What else can I say here? Yeah, so I'm playing with all of this right now. I'm happy with that. Also, what I want to mention is my title is going to go in both of those areas as well. So I have the title in the top left there, which is going to be My Family, and the subtitle, which is going to be The Year, in the bottom right. Also, you may notice in the bottom right, that's where my journaling is going to go as well. So now I'm coming in with some of these punched out flowers, and I'm sprinkling them in both embellishment clusters, which kind of adds a nice repetition in both of those areas. I always like to add repetition in my embellishment clusters. Now I hadn't adhered anything down, so you saw me come in with my phone. I snapped a few photos of my embellishment clusters because I had to move everything off so that I could adhere my foundation page, which is what I'm doing now. And you may notice I cut that striped paper. That's because I didn't feel like covering up that beautiful striped paper with my wood grain paper. I prefer to do that on that piece of generic American Crafts cardstock. So that's what I'm doing right now. That's also a great opportunity to use an ugly piece of paper. That American Crafts white cardstock wasn't ugly, but sometimes I cover up ugly papers when I'm piecing pieces together to create a foundation page with pattern papers. Anyway, back to my layout here. I'm just fussing to make sure everything is straight here. I don't end up adhering that white border that will be housing my photos to the page quite yet, because I am going to want to play around with my embellishing first. Also, the same goes for my photos there. I don't adhere them to the page at this point, simply because I'm going to want to add some embellishing coming out from underneath the photos as well. So there I go, placing once again my embellishment pieces on the page there. And you can see as I'm adhering them, I'm actually cutting them because a lot of those larger pieces are just being covered up by the layers. So I figured if I could cut off a piece, number one, it's being hidden, so it's no sense just being hidden. And I could also use it on the coordinating page or yet again another page. So you can see what I mentioned earlier. I am working with the layers. That peachy piece is behind the wood grain paper. Now that yellowy notebook paper is being adhered on top of that wood grain paper. And then later on you'll see me with the tags work with the layers as well behind that yellow narrow strip of paper, and yet later on behind that white cardstock. When it comes to adhering that detailed circle that I cut out from that die from Elizabeth Craft Designs, you're going to see me get out another adhesive. I actually use it quite frequently. It's Sticky Specks by Ecstasy Crafts. So basically when you use this, you place the detailed piece on that yellow wax paper. It picks up the adhesive on the detailed piece, and then you adhere it to your project. The exciting news is the Scrapbook Nerd is finally getting this product. I noticed it's on the coming soon list. So if that's a product you've been looking for, watch out for it at the Scrapbook Nerd because it will be there. I'm really happy about it. I've been using it for a few years now. So now what I'm going to do is actually what I'm doing right now is I'm looking for one of the tags that I can't find. So I end up stopping my film. I figured it's lost in a mess either on this table or underneath my table. And when I was looking for it, indeed I eventually found it, but I ended up finding another piece of ephemera that I liked better. So that's what I end up using. Also, when my camera was turned off, I'm showing you that I did a little bit of adjusting here. You can see there's a space there. That's because I decided I wanted that wood grain paper a little bit higher up. So all I did was I ended up kind of cutting it and moving it up on top of that striped paper. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically, I fudged it a little bit and was able to save all of my embellishing at the same time. So now that I'm happy with that, I adhered that white strip of paper on top of my foundation page. I'm tucking in that other papery piece underneath that white cardstock and on top of that yellow paper that's in the border. And now I'm placing my photos, but I'm still not ready to place my photos. And by the way, when I turned off my camera and did those adjustments, I also added foam adhesive behind those photos. I do find that working in this pale color palette, that dimension is even more important than usual for me because I'm not relying on color for a lot of contrast. Some of my contrast is being made with dimension, including my photos, which are just raised up a little bit with some foam adhesive. So now what you see me doing is working on the cluster at the bottom. So with that sticky specs, I once again adhered that detailed circle coming out from underneath that white cardstock. Now I'm placing that tag, which is from the Papery Pack. And now I'm just going to play around with those flowers a bit. Now I'm finding the white on white a little bit boring. So you see me here with one of my trusty punches from my stash that I've had forever. It's an old retired leaf punch from Stampin' Up! And I'm punching out a bunch of leaves in that pale green, which is the flip side of that wood grain paper. And if you are to look at my title, which is so minimal, it's tone on tone, my family there, the sides of that, the foam is that same minty green. So everything on this page is really subtle. Anyway, those green punched out leaves are a nod to the title, which is great because the title is already really subtle. It also makes my flowers stand out a bit more. So you can see me working with the flowers, working with the leaves. Again, my photos aren't adhered at this point. So what I'm doing is I'm adhering the pieces that are flat to the page, but some of those flowers will be popped up on foam adhesive. Those ones will be overlapping the photo. So I'm waiting to adhere that until the very end. I'm waiting to adhere my photos at this point. Now you see me working with the flowers in the top left corner. Again, I'm working with some flat on the page, some popped up, and I'm using some of those mint green leaves there. So at this point, I'm happy with it, but I do know I need some finishing touches. One of the reasons why I'm hesitating to adhere the photos at this point, I'm trying to think whether or not I want to keep that white cardstock as plain as it is. And I'm thinking I might want to adhere some of the embellishments or some of those clear stickers actually on top of that coming out from behind the photo, particularly the photo that's in the middle there. I end up going with one of the clear stickers, a little butterfly, just to the right of that photo on the right. But I can't decide if I want something in the middle or not. So I'm looking at those clear stickers. I also have a few circular elements. Those are from the Papery Pack. Those are those washi tape stickers that I mentioned earlier. And I'm kind of thinking maybe I'll put a few of those in the middle there, but I cannot decide. This is a really minimalist layout if I look at it, but at the same time, I'm documenting heritage photos from the 1960s. So I don't want it to be super embellished. I don't know if that makes sense, or I don't even know if that's a good reason why not to embellish. Anyway, that's what's going through my head at this point. So off camera, you are going to see I end up not going with those embellishment pieces underneath the photo in the middle. I end up keeping it really, really simple and plain. And I'm actually quite happy that I did that. I also decided to add a few more clear stickers. If you look there in the top left, there's a little butterfly coming out. And also on top of that tag that has the date on it, underneath I have a little word sticker as well. And I find that helps the year 1964 stand out a little bit more. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd greatly appreciate a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the Scrapbook Nerd YouTube channel, we would be thrilled if you did. The same thing for my channel, Scrapbooking Quebec. Don't forget to check out the Scrapbook Nerd online shop for these fun supplies, and they have tons more as well. Take care, and I will see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.